All right, welcome back to the Let It Fly show. I am Michael Severe. We are inside the Let It Fly Sports Bar, of course, in the Capital District in beautiful downtown Omaha. We will have Josh Jones back at the start of March. He's been doing a lot of stuff in February, but we'll have him back at the beginning of March. Of course, we're inside of an elevated sports bar. It's got everything you need, whether it's the food, the great TVs, great atmosphere, awesome, absolutely awesome place to come and watch games. And whether you're out west, because you have the one out west, Let It Fly, and then you have the one in La Vista too now, which is there in City Center. So it is amazing. The food you get, the deals you get, the specials you get. Don't forget, come here for happy hour from 3 to 6. Great deals as well. Come for reverse happy hour, which is from 10 to 1. Great drink specials, great food specials. And don't forget, every single day, different special. We're taping this on a Wednesday as Creighton's actually playing Connecticut. You can get the Dollar Wing Wednesday. And then on Thursday, they have the great steak special as well. So every day, they have a great special. Also, thank you to Bud Light, our presenting sponsor. They make things easy. Like coming to Let It Fly Sports Bar. You come here, get yourself a Bud Light, watch basketball games, watch football games, watch the Winter Olympics, whatever you want to watch. They make it easy to drink and easy to enjoy. Coming up this week on the show, we're actually going to talk to Josh Peterson. Now, Josh has been the co-host of Unsportsmanlike Conduct on 1620 The Zone for a number of years. I think he said, 14 years now. But he's also built something in the I80 Club, which is really cool. Right? I mean, it's just one of the cooler things. I80 Club, what it does is they, obviously Jack, Mitchell, and Josh do shows together. But they built kind of a network where they have a volleyball show and they have a post-game show for basketball and a basketball hour. Just really good job. And we'll talk more with him about that and how that developed and how he's created this kind of a network in town. But let's do headlines first. As always, Nebraska Basketball falls to Iowa, the worst team to lose to. Especially when you know that for most of the season, you've been better than Iowa. Nebraska only made 5 3-pointers on the game, the fewest 3-pointers they've made since the New Hampshire game at the end of December. They now haven't beat a team with a winning record since January 10th. It's just been a struggle. It really has. And Nebraska's situation now where, we're talking about 2 seed for a long time in the tournament. I've said all along, just win a game. Just win a game in a tournament. Then the 3 seed started popping up. And then Joe Lunardi this week put Nebraska at a 4 seed. And you're like, well, that'll happen if Nebraska loses to Iowa or maybe to USC or UCLA on the West Coast trip. Losing to Iowa puts Nebraska in a really weird situation. You get 2 teams, Penn State and Maryland, that only combined for 3 wins or 5 wins so far in the Big Ten. Then you go to West Coast trip, USC, UCLA. Both those teams have had their moments and had their struggles as well. And then you finish at home against Iowa. You have to build momentum. You have to start getting more confidence and winning games now, this part of the season. That's what gives you the confidence going into the Big Ten tournament and, of course, into the NCAA tournament. So that's got to certainly turn around. Iowa, of course, the fans rushed the court. You had that situation, if you didn't see it, with Fred Hoiberg as he's going through the handshake line. A fan jumps in there, puts a camera in his face, and then he ended up knocking the camera down. It's just a mess. By the way, nothing's going to come from that. The Big Ten looked at it and said, this guy is jumping in front of our head coach or a head coach in the Big Ten. What are you going to do? And that's what he ended up doing. So at this point, where Nebraska is right now certainly doesn't fit what we thought they were going to be 3 weeks ago. But there is the chance that things could turn around. They find their rhythm again. Peyton Sanford gets going again. Brendan Frager, who had the issue with the ankle, really hasn't been the same. He's hit some threes, but the game that they coached on Tuesday night, they lost to Iowa, couldn't hit threes, just made some mistakes, had turnovers. He's got to get his mojo back. Remember, this is a redshirt freshman year for him. It's a lot you need to do still, but they're pretty much locked into this 4 seed, so a triple bye in the Big Ten. The teams that are behind them, they have the tiebreaker over both of them in Michigan State and in Wisconsin, so I think they're still going to get the triple bye. Just got to get confidence. They need confidence. Headline number 2. Husker spring football begins on Saturday. That's right. We're going to have football early. Of course, obviously, Anthony Calandria is the story of camp, bringing him in from UNLV as the new quarterback, most likely. There will be a quarterback battle this spring, but him and TJ Lateef as well. So you got that going on. But I made a list of the things I want to hear the most about or when they allow us to go to practice, see the most during spring. And it starts off first with those running backs. Mekhi Nelson, who I believe is going to be the starter, Isaiah Mosey, but then you have Jamal Rule, the freshman coming in. 6 foot tall, 205 pounds, can catch the ball out of the backfield, really good runner between the tackles. Going to be interesting. You know, a guy like Connor Booth is still there as well, Quentin Ives, but I really want to see those first 3 guys in terms of the running backs. The look of the new O-line. You know, you get Pritchard back, and you have You have Pritchard back, and you have your center back, but you got 2 new guards and a right tackle. Obviously, you got Brendan Black out of Kansas State, Trey Babalati, who's probably going to be the right tackle, and then you have Paul Mamunga out of LSU, who's going to be one of the guards as well. So we want to see how they look together, and just to see, you know, the size. You got to have big guys playing in the Big Ten to be physical in that as well. Emerging wide receivers. Keelan Smith, we saw a little bit of him last year, a little bit during the regular season, a little bit in the bowl game. Quint Clark, another guy we saw in the bowl game. Then there's Cortez Mills, and the guy I'm interested in watching as well in terms of pass catching is Luke Sorensen, the tight end coming out of Servite in L.A. or in California, and there's an opening right now for somebody to step up at tight end, a second guy or a third guy, and he could be the guy. Cornerback spot, Andrew Marshall probably has one of the cornerback spots locked down. On the other side, maybe Danny Odom, as a true freshman, could be the other cornerback. Then you have Jason Shiggs, who's played some safety, played some corner, and Victor Jones III as well. Those are all guys I'm going to be watching for. And the last one is, how will the guys that Rob Orich brought in here to help teach the defense, to help the other players play? Owen Chambliss at linebacker, coming in here, has played a bunch of games, been very successful. He is a run-and-hit linebacker, sideline to sideline, not real big, but really good player. And then you have Dwayne McDougal, who is the safety who's coming in as well, who can help that third level. Finally shore up kind of the safety spot that's had some problems with injuries. Hasn't been great. But we'll see how that goes with those positions. Those are the ones I am looking forward to. And then Creighton, our third headline, kind of tough. They're playing tonight against UConn. Obviously a big game. UConn blew them out badly. It was the worst loss at home under Coach McDermott. And now they're getting a chance to play them now on the road. I thought that they would come out and play really well in the first half. And from what I saw in the scores, this is going along. And you, of course, will know by the time you see this. But after that, the Jays get St. John's on the road, which is a tough matchup. They're in a situation right now at 13-13, and where they are to having a season similar to what they had in 2014 and 2015, which is not where you want to be, obviously coming off of Doug McDermott. But if Jason Green is back, which we think he will be, Jackson McAndrew gets healthy, he's back. Blake Harper, another year in the system under Coach McDermott. Hudson Greer, right, back again. Maybe Owen Freeman is back, and he's healthy. There is a chance they could turn around this pretty quickly, adding a couple of portal guys along with the guys they have coming back and make that improvement pretty quickly for the Creighton Blue Jays. Coming up now, we'll chat with my former coworker, the guy that I see all the time, Josh Peterson. He actually was when I worked at the Zone on Unsportsmanlike Conduct, he was our producer. But now he's expanded to being a co-host for a long time and now being kind of a radio mobile with the I80 Club, mogul I80 Club. We'll talk to Josh Peterson when we come back here on the Let It Fly Show. All right, welcome back to the Let It Fly Show. We are joined by the co-hosts of Unsportsmanlike Conduct on 1620 The Zone and the co-founder of the I80 Club, Josh Peterson. How are you doing?
I'm great, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing well. Let's start there. So how did this I80 Club start? I know it's with Jack Mitchell, KLIN in Lincoln, and obviously the I80 between Omaha and Lincoln, but how did it get started?
So we did a podcast in the summer of 2019 called Be Kind Husker Rewind, where I would drive all the way to his house in Lincoln, and we would watch old Husker games and comment on them live in real time. And then COVID happened, which is funny because you would figure that would have made it easier to do a podcast like that, but it just kind of went away. And a couple years down the road, we were kicking the tires on bringing it back. And Jack had more of an idea of what if we were doing something else. We had a Discord component. We were using Patreon. It would be paywalled because with Be Kind Husker Rewind, we didn't make any money. And if we were going to do some of our time, we wanted to actually start making a little bit of cash. So he had used Patreon before for something, and he was like, I think that this could work. And we kicked around a bunch of different names. And I80 Club because I80 separating Omaha and Lincoln. So that was summer of 2022.
What was the thing that I came to his house and we did. What was that?
That was the Jack Mitchell podcast. And so that was one that he did. He's always been interested, I think like I am, about podcasts and about long-form interviews.
Yes.
And you know it, right? Like,
I love them.
You did a radio show for a long time. I still do a radio show. Very rarely have I ever had a chance to talk to somebody on the radio where it goes longer than, interviews on a daily basis or anywhere between 10 and 20 minutes. Maybe if it's a good one, it like goes, hey, let's stay past the commercial break.
Right.
He wanted to do longer conversations. And so, that was when you and I joined him. And that would have been before Be Kind Husker Rewind. That probably would have been January, February, March of 2019 when we did that.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
all the way back then.
I remember back that Josh Peterson joining us from Unsportsmanlike Conduct and I80 Club. So when did you guys realize after 2022 that you wanted to make it kind of a network, that you wanted to have a series of shows?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would probably say a little over a year ago, because a year ago now is when we added Volleyball State, Jeff Sheldon and Lincoln Arneal, to our podcast network.
Yeah.
Before that, it was him and I, and we would do 2 shows a week sometimes, maybe more. In football season, we lean into that harder. We'll do a post-game show on Saturday nights usually, and we'll do some other stuff during the week. And so it was mainly just him and I. And then in 2024, so we're coming up about 2 years now, we moved to YouTube. And I think that was maybe the first time where it was, hey, instead of it just being us behind the paywall, recording on Discord, sometimes things aren't working. There are like lost episodes because the equipment wasn't properly set up, because we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants, right? Like, we don't have a great producer here hanging out with us recording. And so once we moved over to YouTube, that was when it was, okay, now we're starting to build something. And Jack has a great relationship with Jeff, and Jeff was like, what do you guys think about doing something with us? And I was immediately interested, because nobody is covering volleyball like they do.
Those
and the idea of doing something, and hey, we can help out with the back end. I've started, doing a lot of graphics works. Like, I design all of the look of our shows, and I was like, I think we could build them a really nice look.
Yeah.
We could handle everything that they don't have to deal with. They can just do the show.
Right.
And we've had them for a year now. And so I would say that was the first time where it was, whoa, it is more than just me and just Jack.
Yeah. Out of all the shows that you guys have, and now, of course, you have Unemployed with Mike Schaefer, and you have the Saturday morning coffee show. Which one is your favorite in terms of creating it? Like, the way the idea came about to create it?
I think the Saturday morning coffee show, and part of that might be that it's like our first, basically, baby. But I loved the idea of, let's go on Saturdays all year round, and during football season, it will basically just be like a hype show. Like, we always joke, like, if you don't like the pregame shows for college football, if you're not a game day fan, if you're not a big noon fan, we think we do something that you would enjoy. We're on for an hour. We're on usually between, from 9 to 10. And so we're getting ready for the day. And now this time of year has been so interesting, because we've been talking a lot of Husker basketball, but that has been really fun. Now, I'm not on our Nebraska postgame show basketball very often, the Nebraska Ball Hour.
Right.
I think that was filling a need. Like, there are a million Husker football podcasts out there. Everybody has one. There's not very many Nebraska basketball ones. Jack is a specific type of Nebraska basketball fan.
Yeah.
And I thought, if we do something, we could, I always say, own the market. And I think that we do a pretty good job. I think that we do the best job of anybody on that show.
I learned putting together the bracket for the best podcast. There are 4 basketball podcasts that I know right now, 2 of which I'd never heard of before, but they're out there. And it's not very big.
Yeah.
So let's start with, obviously people know it. I'm going to say you're an Omaha native, but you did live in Michigan for a while.
Yep.
Because your dad was working there.
Yep. So I was born in Omaha, 1988. We lived in Iowa for the early part of my life. We moved down to Tulsa, Oklahoma. My dad went to a Bible college down there. And then we moved to Michigan. And so we lived in Grand Rapids, Michigan from 1993 until 96. Then we came back to Nebraska, and we moved to Omaha in 1997. So outside of going to college in Lincoln, I've been in Omaha, what's that, 30 years now? 30 years, basically, from 1996 until today.
Pretty good chance that your mom was the hottest person in Tulsa. Anyway, we'll move on from there.
Thank you.
Let's go to, so you go to Omaha North.
Go to Omaha North.
Which is a great cross-reference of the society of Nebraska. It is a great, because people think, well, it's just in North Omaha. But I've been to games. I know there's foreign speakers there. It is a really cool amalgamation of everybody. What did that mean to you as a teenager?
Man, okay, I remember during COVID having conversations as there's racial strife around the country and saying something on the air, because it just kind of all was hitting me at the same time of growing up where I did. When you're a kid, you're not thinking about that type of stuff. At least I wasn't.
Nope.
I wasn't like, oh, wow, there's a white kid and there's a black kid. I am a minority. I wasn't thinking about that stuff. Later on, I grow to realize how important that was for, I think, my worldview on things. It was awesome. And in particular, it was awesome because one of the things that Omaha North and all OPS schools had and still have is the Career Center, which is the old Tech High. And that was how I started broadcasting, by going there every single day, starting as a sophomore. So I was doing broadcasting classes as a 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old. And, of course, that was huge for me, too. I went to North at a really interesting time. We didn't win any state championships in football, but Niles Paul, Philip Bates, they were there.
Got close.
Got very close, and that kind of kicked off this run. My brother was on a team 2 years later that went to the semis, which they had never made it that far before. And then after that, of course, they started winning state championships. But my junior year, I was on the track and field team, wasn't good enough to make it to state, but like 4 guys ended up winning state, which was nuts. But they piled up so many points in all of the relay type events. So it was awesome. I can't believe it's now been 20 years, but a super valuable, part of my life that I still look back on fondly.
Yeah. Next year's my 40th anniversary, my 40th reunion.
Yeah. Mine will be 20 this year. It's wild. It's weird to think about.
It is funny how fast it goes by.
Yeah.
So when did you have the dream that you wanted to do something in sports media, and what was the dream? Like, I wanted to be Howard Cosell.
Yeah.
Obviously, I never got to that point.
Yeah.
But what did you want to do? What was the dream?
All right, you ready for this? It was hosting Unsportsmanlike Conduct.
That was the dream.
And that was the dream. And it was because, growing up, my dad, huge sports fan. He is what passed sadly down the Dallas Cowboys to me, which I dislike him for all these years later.
Call CPS.
I go to therapy and I talk about it with him. But so I would be in the car with him, and he'd pick me up from school, and what would be on but 1620 The Zone. And so I remember actually the Kevin and Bob era, like very little of it. And I remember when you joined the show and listening to that, and by the time then that I could start driving and I had a car, when I would get in after school, I would listen. I remember those Friday shows in the fall. I remember one in particular, Michael. 2006, Texas is coming to town. Who is their play-by-play voice for Texas?
Craig Way.
He is in studio with you and Kevin, because Kevin, the next day, he's going to call the game. That's the Snow Terrence Nunn fumble game. And so I remember driving to wherever North played a game that night and just being so on edge and so excited for the game the next day. And so I would do stuff at the Career Center, and that was much more like television focused. But by the time I got to college, as I'm thinking about what do I want to do, I liked the idea of at the time it was a 3-hour show and then a 4-hour show. I loved the idea of a canvas, and I can do, instead of a 3-minute newscast where I talk maybe for a few minutes, but the weather's bad.
And they're cutting you, Yeah,
I want to do a radio show where I can talk about the things that interest me. And, I come from the school, the church of Kevin and Michael, and what did you guys do? A lot of football. And that was what I wanted to listen to, and so I thought that could be something that I got into eventually in my career.
Josh Peterson joining us on Sportsmanlike Conduct and the I80 Club. It's funny, we had a conversation, and this would have been in 2005, about we need to do football every day. Mainly because that was my strength. It was what I knew. And we had a lot of guests that we could do for football. And so we said, okay, and we did that. We basically did football every day. That was the goal, to have at least something. And people will appreciate that because we love football here in Nebraska, so it makes a lot of sense.
We do.
Yeah. So when did you become, so you got an internship, or I remember Damon got you something.
Yep. So Damon went to my parents' church at the time. Yeah. And so this would have been somewhere in like 08, 09, 010 in the words of Nick Baugh. And so I did a radio show starting in 2010, actually, at KRNU. And so I was talking to my dad, and I was like, do you think Damon would come on my radio show? Because, the breakdown was such an integral part of every week during football season. He did the post-game reaction on Mondays and then the pregame preview on Fridays. He was like, it doesn't hurt to ask. And so I asked him, and he agreed to come on my rinky-dink radio show upon further review on 90.3 KRNU. And so I think the interviews, I'd have to ask him. I think he could tell, okay, this guy has a dream that goes beyond just a normal college radio show. He's preparing in a different way. And so we developed a relationship over that year, and I asked him about, would you guys be open for a potential internship? I got connected with Kevin, and he was like, basically, come in after the College World Series, and we'll see if we can figure something out for you. So that was 2011. It's so funny. I look back at that moment. Talk about formative. That internship, it was only like 6 weeks. For me, it seems like I was there all summer long. I got there in May and I didn't leave until October. Yeah. It was only a few weeks, but that led into the part-time work and then into filling in and off to the races.
And then when did you become producer?
I started doing every other day in end of February 2012 when Lacey went on maternity leave.
Yeah.
And then she left the show at the end of May, I believe, when that was like an official piece of news. And then I got the full-time salary, all those things in August of 2012. So basically it's 1 year later, I was suddenly your guys' producer.
When did you start plotting right then to take over the show?
I mean, probably you asked a question one time in 2012. You said, hey, intern, because that's what you guys called me.
My wife still calls you intern.
Do you think you could do a radio show today? And I was like, what in the world is happening? And this was the summer of strife at 1620.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would say probably a year before that is when I really started putting bugs in people's ears. We got to get rid of Kevin and we got to get rid of Michael.
Did you ever think about going to another market?
I did. I had a interview and I did multiple shows in Denver, going back to 2019 again, in 2019. When you and I went on Jack's podcast, I was out there, I think the next week, and I really liked the opportunity. I pulled myself out from it because I didn't really jive well with the co-host. I also don't know if I would have gotten it. I'm guessing I wouldn't have. I loved the idea of it at the time in my life because I was coming off of a divorce and I wanted to get away.
Sure.
I didn't want to live here anymore.
Right.
And I went out there, I tried out, didn't really enjoy doing the show. I love Denver. I have family out there. I thought this would be really cool moving to Colorado.
Sure.
Brett Kane, a friend of mine, he does radio at that station. He still does today. And I came back and I remember going out after the show for a couple beers with my producer at the time, Mike Stibbs, and I said, I think I have unfinished business here. I think I'm going to remove myself for consideration from the job. And it's funny because that was what kicked off the best stretch of ratings that the show had ever had to that point. We had been very up and down. Sometimes we were top 5. Yeah. We had a couple number ones, but then we would drop off and we'd be 7 or 8. And that started a stretch where we were top 3 every single ratings book for multiple years, including a couple number ones in there. And so I felt like I had unfinished business. And, every now and then I wonder what would have happened, but I don't know if I would have even gotten the job. I have always been really happy with that decision to stay. Yeah.
So you were, as my wife still calls you, intern, youngest person there, and now you have a guy like Matt McMaster who's there at 23 or whatever. How does it feel weird to now be kind of like an older guy there?
Yes, it does. And when that showed itself, the hardest for me was when our producer Mike Stibbs, who's basically the same age as me, he's a couple of months younger, he left in 2021. We hired Nick Grimm. And so I go from John being the old guy and then Stibbs and I being the same age millennials to John's older, I'm the millennial, and now we got this Gen Z kid. Yeah. And it was the first time that I felt old. And I was like, I don't understand this. I'm confused. Him and I were arguing all the time about things on the air. It wasn't even really off the air arguments. It was on the air. And now, Mike Schaefer, who is one of our new morning hosts, he is a little older than me, but then I am older than the rest of I'm older than everybody else. I guess maybe Josh Hodson, the producer of Middays with Matt.
Josh could be 30 or 50. I have no idea in those 20 years
40?
Because of his history and what he knows, but he doesn't look that old, but he could be that old. Yeah, I have no idea how old.
So I think I am probably the third or fourth oldest person at the station, but everybody else, it's not like they're younger than me. Happer's a few years, but then everybody else at the station, all the producers, it's like a bunch of young people, and then of course Matt.
This is a weird. Josh Peterson joining us on Sportsmanlike Conduct, 1620 The Zone. This is kind of a weird question, but it's been asked to me many times by different people throughout the city and the business. Why do you think 1620 The Zone has had the lasting power that it's had? Because other stations have come along. They've tried to put shows against it. They've tried to do different things. Hell, I was a part of a show that was kind of against it over at the paper. But what do you think the staying power is for that station?
First of all, I want to hear your answer to after I give mine. I think one of the things that I know I have felt over the years, and part of this is when you start having success, there's not really a lot of hand-holding or micromanaging. I think that one of the things that I've benefited from is having great bosses who allow us to do our show like we want. And I think part of that is, again, if you have success, you know, what are you going to say? And I don't mean to like imply like my bosses can't come up and tell me something,
right?
Because they can, but I think that they see when we allow them the freedom to you know, for that, to go back to my canvas analogy, they can paint the 4 hours however they want to.
Right.
I've never heard anyone say, talk about this, don't talk about that.
Yeah.
It's more, do whatever you want to do. And so
Right.
I think that has really helped. I mean, we put resources into it, right? We have 12 hours of shows every day, and we've had that now for a long time, 5-6 years, you know? I mean, and before it was 11 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, we have been doing at least 11 hours a day going back to when we hired Nick Baugh back to the station, and that was 2013.
Yeah.
That is going to play a huge part. For our show specifically, I mean, John and I have been doing it for 11 and a half years, which is an insane amount of time.
Yeah, because Kevin and I did it for only 8.
Yeah. Think about that. 8 years seemed like a long time.
Yeah.
We've been on multiple years longer than that. And so, and that can be good and bad, right? Like there's some days where I think both of us are like, this isn't working. We're like an old married couple. But I think the majority of the time it really helps that we can fall into various discussions or whatever because we know how the other operates.
I just remember meeting with 590, Kevin and I did. And I remember Jim, the guy who we're talking to, saying he couldn't get it because we don't have a good signal.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, the signal sucks.
Still don't.
And you don't have a great signal, but still they couldn't get close to us in ratings. He's like, what it is. And I always said, it's just good teams, right?
Yeah.
You got to have good teams, whether it was just the one team, and we weren't going against a lot when it first started. Obviously, you had a national show on 590. You had some stuff in Lincoln, wasn't much, to building the team to where it was a morning show that had good chemistry. Nick Baugh was perfectly in the middle. I think it's just having good teams.
Yeah.
And the other places haven't been able to do that. They haven't been able to establish a team that people can relate to. And we've had, no matter who it's been, I mean, there's about 7-8 different teams I can think of, and all of them have been pretty successful.
I would agree, and I don't know exactly. I don't want to like speak for everybody who's worked at the Zone or at other stations. I'll speak for myself. I am really competitive, you know, and I know Kevin was the same way.
Oh, he was incredibly
Kevin was the, what time are the ratings out? I'm going to go get into Neil's computer and see that. I am the exact same way. All my bosses have known that. I mean, whenever I meet a new boss, I always tell them, like, I'm the guy who's going to want the ratings. They come out at 12. I'm going to want them by 12:02 at the latest.
Yeah.
And so that is how I always operate. I want to know how we are doing. I'm a listener of so much stuff, just like you are. You take in a lot of different things. I'm always trying to find good ideas. And I think McMaster said something the other day to me when we were having dinner about like, there was this idea that they did on a show and I was jealous of them. And
He told me that.
That's such a great mindset to have because I'm the same way. If you hear a great idea, you're like, oh, I wish that I could have come up with that one because that would have really fit my show well.
Yeah, and when people don't understand, whether it was Arbitron or Nielsen, you're talking about a very small amount of books. So they'll send out a certain amount. Maybe they send out 200 books, right, to the Omaha metro area or the 3-county area. And then maybe sometimes 40 come back, maybe. So you're judging your life and your financial well-being on a couple dozen people deciding to write you down. I mean, it's not the best way to do it. Bigger markets have metered radio. Yeah. It's different. And now you can factor in what happens in terms of the streaming. That gets factored in the second level. But, yeah, it's not a healthy way to judge who actually people are listening to.
Yep, it's the only game that we can play in Omaha, sadly.
The only one. It's the only one we have. Let's talk about some Nebraska football.
Okay.
Simple question. Will Nebraska ever get back to being relevant on a consistent basis again?
What does relevant mean?
Well, relevant is people are talking about you each season, not for bad stuff, but talking about you after October.
Okay.
So are people having conversations about you? So people always say, it's never going back to the 90s. And I always go, forget the 90s.
Can it go to the 80s? Yeah, the 80s. That's a sweet spot.
Be the 80s, right? Yeah. Yes, they failed several times to win a national championship and very close.
Won the conference.
Won the conference, played Oklahoma for that, finally got over the hump, beating Oklahoma. Why not be there? How can Nebraska get back to that in this era?
I, for the longest time, thought no. I've said on my show many times they're never winning a national championship again. It doesn't make people very happy. Indiana has done such a number on me, though, and I imagine it's done a number on a variety of fans and watchers of college football. And so I think the answer is yes. It just would take something special. It would take a head coach of X amount of level. You know, I don't even know what to say about recruiting anymore. You know, what do I say about it? It would take this type of recruiter. I mean, a portal manager, a GM. Like, it's just, it's so different. But I don't know. If Indiana can win a national championship, I don't know why Nebraska couldn't win 10 games on an annual basis anymore. Like, it doesn't seem like, I mean, it's obviously difficult. We haven't seen it around here, but it doesn't seem like it's like the most out-of-pocket thing for me to have an opinion on anymore.
It was one of the first things I said when I started working in 2004. Callahan obviously was in his first year, and I go, they're never winning a national championship again. And people were not very happy with the new guy.
But it's 22 years ago now.
But I do think with the way the portal is now and the way things work, they have a much better chance now. And then add in that you have a tournament now.
Yes.
It used to be you had to be one of the 2 best teams. And then you had to be lucky the way the BCS worked out. And did you even match up with that team, 94 Penn State or some of the split championships?
Yeah.
Then you get to the point where it's 4, and still, that's a lot.
Yeah.
To have 12, 16, 24, I think almost anybody can win it.
I was talking about with my wife recently that if you go now since the 2001 season, so just 2002 onward, it's wild because, like, I remember when they went to 4, and it's like, wow, that should be easier. Nah, they were still pretty far away. They're at 12. I think there is I think it's still 0 seasons since then that they would have finished going in after the conference championship games inside of the top, let's just say 11, right? So even if it expanded to 24, in the last almost 25 years, they've only been in the top 24 at the end of the regular season a couple of times, 2-3 times in there.
2012.
Some of the Bo years and the one Mike Riley season. And, like, that's pretty much it. And so, like,
2016 definitely. I saw a listing for that one.
And so it doesn't seem like it's that. I mean, that's not that high of a bar to clear. Being a top 25 team, oddly, it has been an insanely high bar to clear for this program.
Yeah. What do you think the biggest reason for the disappointment's been? If you put one reason, mine's always blaming Tom Osborne for retiring too soon.
Oh, that's a great one.
What is your one reason? Let's just talk about the last 10 years. So you go back to 15 through 2025. What's the biggest reason for the disappointment?
You know, and I'll even go back a little further. I think that they are always behind on what the trend is. You know, like, remember one of the things that people talked about for years was the strength training. That was so far out in front of people. Like, they're just doing all these things that nobody else is doing at the time. I look at the hire of a Mike Riley in particular. I almost wonder, Michael, if we could say the same thing about Rule, where let's say a Matt Rule type 10 years ago, a guy who was really good in college at multiple stops, fails in the NFL, returns. Those guys are usually slam dunks.
It's Nick Saban.
Exactly. And yet, this is not. And I have thought about that a lot over the last couple of months. And I do wonder how much of it is because the sport has now swung so far in that it is now pro-adjacent, at the very least, in terms of roster management. And so it's funny. Again, a decade ago, I think a Matt Rule hire would be killer. Development, recruit, get the diamonds in the rough, which I think Nebraska was trying to build through for years. And right now, it is still struggling to work. So I just think even Callahan, we got to do the West Coast thing. And then by the time that he could have even gotten going, it was like, nope, we're moving on to the spread. Oh, now Frost can do the spread. Nope, that's not even the thing anymore. They're always behind the times and who they're going after.
Yeah, one of the toughest things when you're judging the era that you're playing in is that you have to have somebody who's willing to go out there on the edge and run something. Like when Baylor, I remember talking to Art Browse about this, not a great guy to talk now, but talking to Art Browse about it, and he said, everybody's gotten so small. Right? You know what I want to have? I want to have big physical people. I want to be able to run the ball. Even though they were spread, they had guys that could run you over because now the linebackers were 200 pounds, right? Or 250 or 60 on the defensive ends. And so you always got to have that guy. I don't know if they've had that guy really since Bo decided to go to the Peso, and he kind of got a hold of what the Big 12 was doing and figured their offenses out. But since then, there's not been a guy like that.
That is obviously the last time that it seemed like Nebraska football mastered something. They mastered defense in that era, in that conference, against that competition, to the point where, I mean, that defense was incredibly good, like full stop, regardless of context. But then it's almost like one of those, you had to be there, though. You had to watch the Big 12 games the other weeks and watch what Missouri and Kansas and Texas Tech and Baylor, like all these teams were doing. I mean, that 2008 season, Bo's first year, that Oklahoma team had that stretch where I think it was 5 or 6 games in a row where they scored 50 or more points. And now that year wasn't very good for Nebraska versus Oklahoma.
First play.
But the next year, they held them to 3 points in Lincoln, and it was like something, they had Ndamukong Suh. The level of play at all three of the levels was the best it's been, obviously, since then. They have not mastered anything on the football field since then.
They knew, and this is the hardest thing about recruiting or now in the portal, you have to have a system that you know who fits in your system.
Correct.
And they knew. So Levante David maybe didn't fit in everybody's system. Undersized guy who wasn't recruited high out of high school, wasn't recruited high out of junior college. But in this system, he was great.
Yeah.
Eric Martin, a guy who really had no place. Well, they found a place for him. You're a designated pass rusher. And I think he had double-digit sacks, right? So, yeah, you got to be able to fit where the guys fit in.
Yeah.
So growing up, I'm assuming the hated teams were Missouri.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Texas.
Yeah, yeah.
And Colorado.
Yeah, yeah, sure. The 62-36 game did a number on all of us. Kansas State, I think, early on in my life would have been number one for
Definitely
sure.
Like 02.
Yeah. Oh man, the 98
the
loss.
Al Roberson.
Yeah.
And then,
That's like a formative memory for me. The 98 loss, the 2000 loss in the snow, and then they just started kind of running off victories after 2001. And so that was the team for a while. But Missouri, man, they held on to my fandom hate for so long, even years after the Big 12 defection, right? Like I didn't like Chase Daniel, the Blaine Gabbert. I'm not going to pull a Josh Freeman, talk about another memory, and I heard that interview on Unsportsmanlike Conduct back in the day. So yeah, Missouri really fit that, so well for me for so long. And Texas was they were an easy villain because in a way, like they were like a cartoon, superhero type villain of like, they're like on this pedestal of like, what are they doing over there?
9 out of 10 years.
Yeah. Oh, and it
9
was
out of 10 games.
The most heartbreaking games imaginable. I mean, if you ask me, Josh, what's the worst Husker loss, of your youth? I know that the 2009 game cost them the conference. The 98 game cost them the winning streak. The 99 game maybe cost them a national title.
Definitely.
That 06 loss in the snow when Terrence Nunn, we talked about it earlier, that loss hurts me to my core.
Yeah.
I will watch highlights of games where they lost before. I don't like watching anything from that game because it takes me back 20 years and I start feeling a pit in my stomach.
So where does Iowa fit in all that?
Oh, they are, and I think you and I talked about it on the show this week. They are a perfect amalgamation of all of those teams, except for Texas, they're not that super evil villain. There's something annoying about them though because you think Nebraska should be better, and you think that Nebraska is going to get over them, and they never are able to. But the difference with them, and it's not like Colorado's not next door, or Kansas isn't next door, or Missouri's not next door, but Iowa is like, they're not next door. Like, they're in your basement. They're like, they're actually in your, maybe they're upstairs, you're in the basement. Right. They are there. They are on top of you, and they find the ways to win in the most horrifying ways imaginable. I mean, the basketball loss this week was pretty bad. It doesn't hold a candle to some of the football stuff we've seen over the last decade.
That 2 years ago one there in Iowa City when it was brutally cold, when they couldn't get a first down, when they were 0 for 10 on third down, and somehow you walked out of there and go, Nebraska lost that game?
20 first downs to 5.
Yeah.
It's like 3 plays. They have the muff punt, which only results in a field goal.
Only a field goal.
4 plays. The Nair drop, the sack fumble at the end. Then, of course, the Caleb Johnson. How does he break that many tackles on that one play? That game. And then
the sack.
And then the sack fumble. The 2021 loss, which I was in attendance for, I think that might be the last game that I went with my dad to over the last handful of years. We haven't been to any game since. And watching that, I always call it a slow motion car crash because Nebraska is up, 21-6.
Yeah.
And you would think, okay, so what? Iowa gets a couple of scores and they tie it on a 2. No, it's like blocked punt, safety, field goal, all these strange turnovers. And it is just like, it was a perfect day in Lincoln. It was almost 70 degrees. I didn't have a coat at the game. And it's just like, oh no, this is going to turn into a disaster. And obviously it did.
Yeah. Josh Peterson joining us, Unsportsmanlike Conduct, I80 Club. So I'm going to go 20 years now. So 2006 to now, if you could change one thing that happened for Nebraska football, what would the one thing be?
I will go with the low-hanging fruit of winning the... See, some people say 2010 Big 12 championship so you can flip the bird on the way out the door.
They're up 17-7.
Yeah.
They try to run that stupid play into the half where they have Martinez throwing.
You can't throw across your body, young man. My answer, though, is 09, the Texas game. Yeah. And mainly because I have always wondered if they win that game, do they even leave the conference?
I agree.
And we will never know the answer.
I don't think they leave either.
I have always wondered that. That game, I mean, talk about a horrifying moment for a generation of fans. I wasn't in the building for that one. I was in the building for the next year against Oklahoma. But I remember I thought that defense was awesome that year. I mean, of course, it went up so many levels that one night, and Ndamukong Suh I mean, is that the best individual performance you've ever seen since you've been covering Nebraska?
One of the greatest I've ever seen. I can't think of anything on defense.
Ragdoll throw.
I can't think of anything on defense like that.
Yeah.
Burkhead had a couple of games where he was incredible.
Roy Halou, the
300-yard one against Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
But defensively, and even Levante David had a 21 tackle game.
Yeah.
But yeah, that game that Sioux had that day was just amazing.
So it's such a bummer because it's like one of those classic, overachieving upsets that the odd part about Nebraska football, and Dirk Chatelain talks about this a lot, is like they haven't gotten that one moment. Like everybody gets a moment except for Nebraska. And it's not like they beat ranked teams in that time period. You know, the next year, you just mentioned Roy Halou. That was the following year. They were a top 10 Missouri team. But that Texas loss, you could make an argument. It would have erased all of the other losses to Texas if they were able to overcome them on that day. And again, the biggest picture of, do they leave the Big 12 for the Big 10?
Even the Michigan State game that they won when Michigan was 3?
Oh, in 2015?
Yeah,
they were a top 5 team. That was a playoff team.
And Nebraska's coming off of losing to
Purdue on Halloween.
The only game that Purdue won, I believe it was the only game that coach won in the
Darrell
Big
Hazel,
Ten.
right?
Yeah. I think that's the only one he won. But yeah, Darrell Hazel with the funny hat. Yeah, that's so many of those.
Yeah,
so many of those. It's crazy. So I know there's still 5 games left in the Nebraska ball season. Mm-hmm. There's still the Big Ten tournament. There's whatever's going to happen in the tournament. But how would you describe this season so far? Because it's been really strange.
It has. I mean, I went in thinking, they'll be all right. And then they got off to I won't even say 20, but a 10-0 start. That week where it was, who they beat, it was Creighton, Wisconsin, Illinois. Boom, boom, boom. And it was like, okay, this is a special team. By that point in time, I think a lot of us collectively, they're going to win their first tournament game.
Yeah.
And then they get all the way to 20, and their next game is Michigan. And they play so well that even though they lost, it's like, maybe this team is actually better than I thought they were because they're down 2 of their best players and they almost win. The Illinois loss, I think you could kind of hand wave it away because of extenuating circumstances. The Purdue loss was the first one where it was like, ugh, even though they come back.
Make a free throw. But
also, why are you down 14-1 at the start of the game?
Right.
And so I would say going into the Iowa game, and it's so funny, I talked myself into picking Nebraska because I had a feeling and I just changed for some reason at the last moment. Now I am, I think that they can definitely win a tournament game. I think any of the conversations that we had a month ago I have long thrown those out the window where I was like, is this team like that special?
Right.
And I don't think the answer is going to be yes anymore. Yeah. I still think that they're good. I think that the vibes are I don't want to say that like inside the team they're bad. Certainly like people are debating how good they're going to be and all that type of stuff. I think that they're good. I don't know what's going on though. Like Frager has not been the same since he came back from the injury. Rink Mast, I mean, he has 2 good games in the last month and a half. Yeah. Jamarcus Lawrence, I mean, even now we're starting to wonder about him and what's going on. So I'm waiting for someone outside of I can't remember his name, but I'm just waiting for someone, I guess, to step up outside of Price Sanford right now. Yeah. That it's just like, okay, that guy is going to be there night after night. And maybe it's going to be Frager.
This reminds me something that Calvin Sampson said. This is back when he was at Oklahoma. And he said, wait till we get in the tournament because these teams don't know us. Because they were having a thing where they went to the Big 12 tournament and you end up getting knocked out, I think, like in the first round. And he goes, I actually feel okay about this because when we get in the tournament, we're playing teams that don't know us.
Yeah.
And we need the rest, right? Wait, let's see how Nebraska plays when they do get in the tournament. Whether it's a 14 seed or a 13 seed or a 12 seed, teams have not played against this kind of defense. Sanford can go off at any time.
He can.
Don't understand Rink Mast. They don't know how good Hoiberg is at stealing the ball and being a nuisance. They could really surprise somebody. Teams.
I think that you were spot on that because when you start looking at the downfall of the season so far, it would definitely come when they start running into teams either a second time, but more that there is just so much more tape on them, and that it's teams that have seen them. Maybe it's not this year yet, but they have seen them in previous years. And so you're right. By that point in time, you're doing quick turnaround on your prep, because right now, look down the road a couple of weeks. USC and UCLA, they know that they're going to play them. They can start looking ahead a little bit, or any of their assistants can.
Yep.
Nobody in the tournament can do that right now. It's not like, some random 13 seed is like, all right, let's get our Nebraska prep in right now.
Exactly. That's not going to happen.
No.
So this is something I always ask people that, get involved in sports media. Are you as big a fan as you were before you got into the business, and what's changed?
I am as big of a fan of... I'm a bigger fan of the Dallas Cowboys than I was before I got into the business. I always tell this to people with Nebraska. So I want them to win.
Yeah.
I want them to do well. I emotionally do not invest in games like I did when I was younger.
Sure.
And this is always a question that I remember thinking, I think I asked it to you and Kevin when I was an intern. Are you still allowed to be a fan? I think some of it is generational. I think it's changed. I think there are a lot more people, right? I come from, again, the church of Kevin and Michael. I do my darndest, and I don't say it very often. I don't say we. I only say we when I'm talking about the Cowboys. I don't say that with Nebraska.
Yeah.
I had a night where it changed for me, and it was the 2016 Nebraska football overtime loss to Wisconsin.
Oh, my God.
7-0, and I was at a friend's house. There was a bunch of us there, probably a dozen people. And the way in which that game ended, and I remember on Sunday morning, I was going to go back and rewatch some of the game, and just how I was like, I don't want to rewatch this game. I don't want to feel the pain of yesterday. And I remember it was almost like an agreement that I made with myself of like, you can't operate this way anymore. And so, again, I want them to win. If I go to a game, I cheer. If I'm at a party for a game, I'll cheer. It's not like I'm going to sit there stoically. Yeah. I can also go to a game and sit in the press box and not cheer as well.
Yeah.
Want them to win. And so that's the thing that's changed. I also, and some people hate this, I think about it from the job. I want them to do well because, to make my family happy. It would make me happy in a different way. I want them to do well because I think it'd be good for work.
You want the best story.
I do. And because, what's the critique of the media? You guys love the negativity. No. They've been the same team for a decade now. Like, this isn't fun. I would love that's one of the things that made the basketball season so fun. That's one of the things that made following Creighton basketball over the last handful of years fun is they're doing something that they have never done before. And even if I'm not a diehard fan that grew up rooting for them, I can appreciate that it means so much to my co-host John Bishop or all of our listeners who are Creighton fans.
Sure.
That's like the basketball team this year, it's been like, whoa, what a fun story. What a fun ride. I get to go to work and I get to talk about the thing that everybody is talking about at their offices. I would love to get to do that with Nebraska. I follow a variety of beat writers that cover teams around the country. And it's like, wow,
They've all had joy.
What would it be like if we got to go to a bowl game? What if I got to go to Florida or Arizona in December or January? So I have basically taken all of the Husker fandom and just poured it into the Dallas Cowboys, which is probably bad for my health.
It is.
Because this has come at a period where the Eagles have suddenly won 2 Super Bowls after not winning any Super Bowls. Yep. And the Cowboys streak of not even making an NFC championship game has now grown to 30 years. My first year watching the Dallas Cowboys was 1996. For those who don't know, that's the first season after their last Super Bowl win appearance, NFC championship game appearance. I've never seen them get past the divisional round. I don't know what it would be like. Crazy. I don't know the stress of it. I would love to appreciate it and get to watch it someday. Yeah. And so that sucks. And then I married an Eagles fan, which my decision.
Yeah, sure.
But she has, since we've been together, our teams were like even for the first few years, where it was like Cowboys would win the division, Eagles would win the division. Mm-hmm. Cowboys would beat the Eagles, Eagles would beat the Cowboys. And then 2022 happened, and it's like, the Eagles are better. Oh, thank God they lost in the Super Bowl. 2023, Dallas is really good. Nope, they lose by $1 million to the Packers, and then the Eagles win the Super Bowl. Yeah. And now all I can hope for is that the Cowboys beat them from time to time.
That 2016 game at Wisconsin, I was on the sideline, and Lane Grindle was standing next to me. We had gone down there, and I'm talking. I didn't know Lane was even there. And we're talking, and I remember it was second down, and Nebraska at the 38, 39-yard line. And I remember saying to Lane, I said, they need to get a field goal here and win this game and get out of here. And he threw a bomb. It was a deep post. Tommy did. And I'm like, what is he doing? He needs 6 yards. Kick a field goal, get out of here. Third down, same thing, scrambled through a deep ball. And then he had to punt.
Yeah.
And we both looked at each other going, this is going to go to overtime.
Yep.
And they're going to lose it. And obviously, they didn't gain a yard like they haven't gained a yard in overtime in forever. So
I think I had to go to church the next morning too, like a baptism of some sort. And it's like I'm hungover and tired and mad and cold because the calendar is turning. And I'm just like, this sucks. And now I get to go rewatch the game and talk about it on the radio. So that was a moment in time.
Let's rank these coaches, okay?
Okay.
It's random, okay? Bo Pelini, Mike Anderson, Tim Miles, Mike Riley, Doc Sadler, and Scott Frost.
Oh, my gosh. Okay. So I'm going to go. Bo is easily number 1. It's not even close for me. Mike Anderson, he did go to the College World Series. Yeah. But, man, the drop-off by the end of the Mike Anderson era was so rough.
Yeah.
Okay, so give me outside of Bo, give me the coaches again.
Mike Anderson, Tim Miles, Mike Riley, Doc Sadler, Scott Frost.
Scott Frost is last.
He was.
was. He never went to a bowl game. Remember they went 3-9.
That is true. And Tim Miles did go to a tournament game.
Since the 50s, yeah.
Doc Sadler did not, though.
So, yeah, I'd go Mike Anderson. I would have... Let's see. Do I want Tim Miles or Mike Riley? I mean, Tim Miles took them to their first tournament in 16 years. So I'll go Tim Miles, Mike Riley, then I'll go Doc Sadler, and then, in last, easily, the worst Nebraska football coach since the 50s, Scott Frost.
That is crazy. Last question.
Okay.
Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Oh, my gosh.
How old are you now?
37.
You'll be 47 years old.
Almost be 50 years old.
You'll be 47 years old.
Now, so if I answer this question and a boss sees this, I just don't want there to be this implication that I'm trying to bail on anybody.
No, it's
at
10 years
station.
from now. That is a decade. Anything could happen in a decade.
That's true.
Especially in this country.
Mm-hmm. You love Bill Simmons. We talked about Bill Simmons off the air
I used to listen
today.
to Bill Simmons a lot. I don't listen to him anymore.
I had a friend of mine this week say that I am the Bill Simmons of the media, of the local media, and he said that as a compliment because of what I've been able to build with the I80 Club.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And how I do a lot of stuff behind the scenes. I'm not just doing stuff on the air. I would love that to be built into something that I really can't imagine. If you would have asked me 3.5 years ago, I wanted to talk to Jack. That's all I wanted to do. Jack wanted to build a community. I was like, I don't care about that stuff.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the community has been such a vital piece to the I80 Club's growth. We have a diehard group of listeners and subscribers that I genuinely care about because I've met a lot of them in person. I would love to see this thing continue to grow in a way that, again, I can't really fathom right now. We're going to go to the NCAA tournament in March, the I80 Club. We will be wherever Nebraska is. We have sold a title sponsorship. We have sold other sponsorships. I want to see what that can become. I would also like to cover one good Nebraska football season at the very least. Yeah. I definitely do not want to get out of the business. I've toyed with leaving before, mainly because I just want to make more money.
Sure.
But I do love the job. I have a great job. I get to talk about the thing that I would talk about it at work if I didn't have this job. I always say this to people, Michael, and I know that you would probably be able to relate. The way that people kill time at their jobs is what I do to get ready for mine. I get to wake up and open articles. I can have 10 tabs of information, and I get to do this to prepare. Other people do it because they're bored or they hate their job. That is very special, and that is something that I never take lightly, that I get to do that type of stuff, and that I don't have a dress code, so that's pretty cool, too.
That is very true. That is very true. I would like to say I'm very proud of you. Everything that you've done.
Thank you.
I mean, obviously, the show that you and John have built has been incredible. The I80 Club stuff. I remember just kind of seeing stuff go by on Twitter, and I'm like, what are they doing? And I would listen in a couple times, like, what are they doing? And then to see where it's grown to, and volleyball state, I mean, you get the two best guys in the world to do that. It's not even close. And I'm not even a volleyball person, but I mean, it certainly fits. But it's amazing what you guys have done.
Thank you, Michael.
So even though I don't like Jack, good job by you.
You have been incredible for my career. You've been so important to my career. You listen to the show. I honestly think it's like you and then probably everybody else. I get more feedback from you. I get more opinions from you about a variety of topics. I get more trash talking of people from you. I love it, and I very much appreciate it, so thank you.
Well, I appreciate you doing this. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
Josh Peterson from Unsportsmanlike Conduct, and of course, the I80 Club. All right, thanks to Josh Peterson. We appreciate him taking the time. Next week, a group that is really close to my heart, Bags of Fun, are going to come in. If you've never heard of them, for children who are in the hospital for long stays, they actually raise money, get toys, computer stuff, all this stuff in a bag, and they literally bring the bag to the hotel room and bring smiles and happiness to kids that are locked up in the hospital, that are in the hospital for a long time with surgeries or cancer treatment. And so it's an amazing organization, and we're going to chat with them next week more about what they're doing and how they're fundraising. They got a big event coming up, so we'll chat with the folks from Bags of Fun. I'm very excited about that. Special thanks to Josh Peterson for coming on with us, to Caleb, the producer of the show, Mike Allen, executive producer, and of course the folks at Stable Gray to do all the video and handle all that as well. And our presenting sponsor, Bud Light, making it easy no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, making it easy to drink and easy to enjoy. And remember, subscribe to us on YouTube if you're watching it there, like as well, and then of course if it's Spotify or Apple, wherever you're listening, like and subscribe to the show. It certainly helps us out. Thanks for joining this week. We'll see you next week on the Let It Fly Show.